Hi, everyone, and a warm welcome to the Pride Path podcast. Here we share your stories, the ones you send us, so that together we can explore and experience life in all its colors and forms. We talk about everything from ADHD challenges to proud Pride moments. Today, we're focusing on a topic that many of you can relate to or have questions about: what it's really like to come out as gay to your parents. And with us in the studio today, we have Malin. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
We're so glad you're here and willing to share your story with us. There are so many out there who can relate to your situation, but also many who might still be wondering how to take that step themselves. Can you tell us a bit about how your journey began?
Of course. So, I've always kind of known that I like girls. I remember being 8 years old the first time I said something to my mom. We were sitting in the car on the way home from my swim practice, and I told her that I thought I was in love with one of my girlfriends. I can see it so clearly. Her face looked a bit surprised at first, but then she smiled a little and said, "Oh, it's probably just a phase, darling." And then it was just quiet. I immediately felt that it wasn't something I should continue talking about just then, so I dropped it. Deep down, I knew it wasn't just a phase, but it was a hard thing to carry as a child, not being taken seriously.
Seriously. That sounds really tough, Malin. That's a lot for such a young child to handle. What habit affect you during your teenage years?
Well, I did what I could to fit in. In middle school, I developed a crush on a boy named Daniel, not because I felt attracted to him, but because it seemed like the normal thing to do. We started dating when we were both 14. He was sweet and kind, and everyone thought we were a cute couple. But as we got older, Daniel wanted to take things further than just holding hands and innocent kisses. He started talking about becoming more intimate, and the thought of it made me feel uncomfortable, even a bit disgusted. I couldn't understand why I felt that way, but now I realize it was because I wasn't being true to myself. We stayed together after school most days because I didn't want to worry my parents by walking home alone. Eventually, I knew I couldn't keep leading him on. So one day, after school, I told him that I wanted to break up. I used the excuse that I needed to focus on my studies, but the truth was, I just couldn't pretend anymore.
That must have been a difficult decision, especially at such a young age.
It was, but it was also a relief in some ways. After breaking up with Daniel, I didn't date anyone else throughout high school. I told everyone and myself that I was too focused on my grades because I wanted to become a lawyer. It was a convenient excuse, and it kept the questions at bay. But inside, I felt isolated. I was hiding a part of myself, and that was lonely.
Lonely. It's understandable. High school is hard enough without that kind of internal struggle. What happened when you started university?
University was a turning point for me. Moving away from home gave me the space and freedom to explore who I really was without the pressure of fitting into others' expectations. I immersed myself in my studies, but also started attending LGBTQ plus groups on campus. It was there that I met Lisa. Lisa was confident, funny, and unapologetically herself. She caught my attention immediately. We met at a university event, and I remember being drawn to her energy. She had this way of making everyone around her feel comfortable and seen. With her, I didn't have to pretend.
That sounds like a significant moment in your life.
Absolutely. For the first time, I felt like I could be myself. Lisa and I started spending more time together, and our friendship naturally developed into something more. It was both exciting and terrifying. I was happy but also scared about what it would mean for my relationships with my family and old friends.
How did your family react when you eventually told them?
After Lisa and I had been together throughout university, we felt it was time to tell my parents. We planned to move in together in a new apartment, which happened to be in the same city as my parents. I couldn't imagine moving back without them knowing the truth. We arranged a family dinner, just me, Lisa, my mom, and my dad. Sitting at that table, my heart was pounding. Lisa held my hand under the table, giving me the courage I needed. I took a deep breath and said, "Mom, Dad, I have something to tell you. Lisa isn't just my friend, she's my girlfriend." There was a heavy silence. My mom looked surprised, and my dad's expression was unreadable. Eventually, my mom sighed and said, "Well, I guess I've always known, deep down. That admission was such a relief, even though it didn't come with any grand declaration of acceptance. It was real and it was honest. When we got up from the table, my mom gave me a hug. It wasn't as long or as warm as her hugs used to be, but it was a hug at least. And my dad, he gave me a nod. That was it, just a nod, but it was something. It wasn't rejection, and in that moment, that was enough. Sometimes those small gestures are more meaningful than words can express.
How has the relationship been since then?
In the beginning, my mom just couldn't seem to let go of the idea that I should be with a guy, especially one of her friend's sons. It was frustrating because it wasn't like she was being openly critical of Lisa, but the little comments she'd make were just exhausting. I remember one family dinner where Lisa was sitting right next to me, and my mom casually mentioned how successful one of her friend's sons had become. Have you heard about Marcus? He's doing so well at his new job. You should really catch up with him, Malin. He's such a nice guy, she said with a smile, like she hadn't just erased the fact that I was sitting there with my girlfriend. It felt like a slap in the face, and I could feel Lisa stiffen beside me. We didn't talk about it much at the table, but I knew it hurt her too. I didn't know what to say to my mom in those moments. Do I argue with her? Do I let it go? It was like she was ignoring everything about who I was and the life I had chosen with Lisa. This wasn't just a one-time thing either. For a while, my mom kept dropping these subtle hints, especially when Lisa was around. She'd say things like, "Oh, did you know Sarah's son just bought a house? He's doing so well for himself. You should talk to him sometime." It was like she thought I could just magically switch back to someone I never was. But over time, things began to shift. It wasn't fast, but I could feel my mom trying. She started making small efforts to connect with Lisa, little things like asking her about work or sharing recipes with her when we'd visit for dinner. At first, it felt awkward, like she was trying too hard, but I appreciated the effort. It was better than pretending Lisa didn't exist. I'll never forget the moment I realized things were really changing. It was after a quiet family dinner, and as we were about to leave, my mom turned to Lisa and said, "You've been a really positive influence on Malin. I'm glad you're in her life." I almost couldn't believe she said it. It wasn't some big declaration, but it was real. It was my mom, in her own way, starting to accept us. It's still not perfect. There are times when things feel a little off, like she's still trying to fully adjust. But those awkward moments don't hurt as much anymore, because I can see her trying, and that's what matters.
Um, it sounds like you have come a long way. And what about your father? How has he taken it?
My dad still isn't the most expressive person, but I've come to understand that his silence isn't necessarily disapproval. Over time, there have been small signs that he's come around. For example, last Christmas, he actually bought a gift for Lisa. It was just a small thing, a book he thought she might like, but it meant so much to both of us. It showed that he was trying, in his own way, to accept us.
Thank you so much for sharing these intimate parts of your journey, Malin. I'm sure your story will resonate with many of our listeners who might be going through similar experiences.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share. If my story can help even one person feel less alone or give them the courage to be themselves, then it's worth it.
That's what Pride Path is all about, creating a community where we can share, support, and celebrate each other. To our listeners, remember that you're not alone. Keep sending in your stories, and we'll keep sharing them. Until next time, stay proud and stay true to yourselves.